Ohio. Ashdod, the sixth most populated city in Israel, located in the southern federal district. The country is on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and 30 kilometers to the south from Tel Aviv. The city is the important regional industrial center. The port of Ashdod, the biggest port in the country, passes 60% of all imported freights through it. Also in Ashdod, one of 3 bases naval forces of Israel is located. The first documented settlement on the place of modern Ashdod is dated 17th century BB. That does it by one of the most ancient cities in the world. Ashdod 13 times is mentioned in the Bible. In the synodal translation, nitrogen. During the different periods, the city was populated with Philistines, Jews, Byzantines, Crusaders and Arabs. Modern Ashdod was founded in 1956 on sandy hills near the ancient city. Its status of the city was given to Ashdod in 1968 when he had the area about 60 square kilometers, and his population passed for 2,000 people. People began to lodge in the neighborhood of modern Ashdod already in the period of the Lower Paleo. The evidence of constant presence of the person in this area remained. Then hunting, collecting and fishery were major activities of its inhabitants. About 5,000 years ago there was a transition to agriculture and cattle breeding. This area was densely populated in the period of the Halkhalite, 4,500–3,500 years BB. The first strengthened settlement on the place of Ashdod appeared in the second half of the 17th century BB. Then the top city, Hakra, and the Acropolis was built. Up to the 13th–12th centuries BB, Ashdod, the Hananiski city, which was actively trading with Cyprus, islands of the Aegean Sea and other states. The first mention of Ashdod contains in Ugarit's archives and belongs to the 14th century BB. In the 13th–12th centuries BB, of a civilization of east coast of the Mediterranean Sea were attacked by the people of the sea. They won the Hetski kingdom, Cyprus, destroyed Ugarit, the shooting gallery, Sidon and some other Middle Eastern cities. Their small group, Philistines, intruded in Canaan. Possibly, they arrived through the island of Crete here and by this moment were carriers of Cretan-Mycenaean culture. Unlike inhabitants of Canaan, they were able to process iron, had a metal armor, boards and fighting chariots and also standing army, and thus strongly surpassed in military force. Along with Gaza, Gat and Ashkelon, they conquered Ashdod and made it one of the cities of the Philistimsky Pentapolicy. The fifth city of the Pentapolicy, Ekron, Philistines based, apparently. These cities were operated by independent governors, sirens, but if necessary they could conduct military campaigns together. The main town of the Pentapolicy during this period, Gaza, in which there was a temple of god Dagon. In the 11th century BB, Ashdod became the Dominarch Philistimsky city ~1. Up to the first half of the 8th century BB, Ashdod, the capital of Philistia. The city becomes stronger and extends. Here began to do special Ashdod ceramics. The square of the city makes during this period about 80 dunam. There is the lower city, fortress of Talmor at the mouth of the Lachish River. The Talmor port was constructed even before Philistimsky invasion, in the 16th century BB. Is under construction. Up to invasion of Assyrians, military collisions between Philistines and Israelis didn't stop. Military success accompanied one other party. In 770 BB, the Judaic Tsar Azariah made attack on Philistines. He captured Ashdod, destroyed his walls, and left in the city the garrison. In 734 BB, the city was conquered by Assyrians under Tartane command. At the end of the 8th century BB, the Assyrian Tsar Sargon II won the Israeli kingdom and Gaza. In 711 BB, Ashdod became the center of a revolt against Assyria. Together with other cities of Philistia and also Judea, Moab and Edom, Ashdod opposed Sargon II, but the coalition got beaten. Sargon of II suppressed a revolt, completely destroyed the city, and expelled its many inhabitants. Fortress of Tel Mor was destroyed. During this period, Fortress Ashdod holes on the seashore began to be under construction. By the end of government of Ashurbanipal and after his death in 637 BB, Assyria fell into decay and her domination in the region stopped. In 625 BB, the city after a long siege was occupied by the Egyptian pharaoh Psammetichus I. According to the Greek sources, the siege lasted 29 years. That is an absolute record in world history. Modern historians, however, are skeptical about these data. In 605 BB, the Babylon Tsar Nebuchadnezzar II destroyed Ashdod and completely destroyed the remains of independence of the Philistine cities. Governors and the population of the city were deported. From this point, Ashdod stopped being the Philistine city and his population became mostly alien. In 539 BB, the Persian Tsar Cyrus Veliky conquered Babylon, and possession of Babylon departed Persia. Ashdod was newly built up. Within the next 200 years of the Persian dominion, Ashdod was the main town of the province of Ashdod. The city became an important point of sea trade again. The entire period, the coin with the inscription Ashdod was minted here. Residents of Ashdod talked on a dialect of Hebrew. Two centuries later, the Persian power was won by Alexander of Macedon. In 332 BB, he took Eretz Israel, including to Philistia. In Ashdod, the big Greek community appeared. After Alexander Ashdod's death, I departed in the possession Ptolemy, and I gained the image of the large Greek city. From now on, he represented two twin cities, the seaport of Azotus Paralios, Ashdod Sea, and the city in the depth of Sushi, Azotus Mesagaios, Ashdod Overland. During the Hellenistic period, the population of the city mixed. There was a small Jewish community. In 147 BB, during the Judaic revolt against the power of Selevkedev, Ashdod was captured by the son of the leader of a revolt, Jonathan Maccabee from the Sort Hasmonev. He destroyed Dagon's temple and annexed Ashdod to Judea. From this point in the city, there was a large Judaic community which disappeared only after gaining the city by Arabs in the middle of the 7th century AD. In the first half of the 1st century BB, the Roman military leader of Pompey intruded in Palestine. The period of the Roman board began. Ashdod becomes the important seaport. Subsequently, the Emperor Augustus annexed Ashdod to Herod's kingdom. In the 66th year, the province of Judea rose against the Roman Empire. The revolt was cruelly suppressed and the Jerusalem temple is burned. Ashdod was destroyed by Romans during suppression of a revolt. The city didn't disappear, however lost the former value, and nearly 1,000 years was the small settlement. In the 9th-10th centuries, after the Arab invasion, on the Byzantine base the fortress of Minatalkola, which became an element of coastal strengthenings of the country, was constructed. In the period of Mamelukes the city becomes empty, and about it there are no mentions. During the Turkish period the Arab village of Ashdod, which existed here till 1948, was founded on the place of Tel Ashdod, the overland city. At the time of the British Mandate, Ashdod was the important Arab town on the coastal highway connecting Yaffo and Ashkelon. The Ashdod station on the railway line of Lod-Gaza-Cairo was built. In 1948, before declaration of the State of Israel, Ashdod's population made about 800 people. In October 1948, during the War of Independence, the population of the city left him together with the receding Egyptian army. In 1953, near the mouth of the Lachish River, construction of power plant began. Our modern name Ashkelon. The workers involved in her construction lived then in Rehovot and Jeddah. On May 1, 1956, the Minister of Finance Levi Eshkol approved the project of construction of the city on sandy hills near ancient Ashdod. The first settlers arrived here on November 25. It were 22 families of repatriates from Morocco. Later the group of immigrants from Egypt joined them. Gradually industrial settlement expanded. People were forced to live in barracks, with a minimum of conveniences. Generally they worked at construction of power plant, planting of trees and in craft workshops. The construction of power plant was completed in 1958. The power plant included 3 blocks. 2 blocks on 50 megawatts and with a 1 power of 45 megawatts. With a possibility of desalting of seawater. In October 1959, Ashdod received the status of local council. Dovgar was appointed its first head. On April 14, 1961, construction of the Ashdod port began, and in November 1963 the port was built. The first ship came to the port in 2 years. In November 1965, it was the Swedish Vingelgate ship. On February 1, 1968, Ashdod was given the status of the city ~2. On May 11, 2021, Hamas and Islamic Jihad launched hundreds of missiles across Ashdod and Ashkelon. Therefore 2 persons died and more than 90 were wounded. On May 15, the Hamas group fired rockets at port in the city of Ashdod. In 1989, Big Aliyah from the Asa begins. By this moment the population of the city made people. From 1990 for 2001 the city accepted more than card new repatriates. Mayors. Dovgar. 1959-1961. Robert Haim. 1961-1963. Avner Garin. 1963-1969. Sweet Silker. 1969-1983. Eri Azulel. 1983-1989. Sweet Silker. 1989-2008. Yakil Lasri. since 2008 till present. In Ashdod, the Mediterranean climate with hot summer, in the pleasant spring and in the fall, and cool, rainy winters. The humidity tends to be high all the year round. The rainy season usually lasts from November to March. In the winter, temperature seldom falls below 5 C, and to a thick at 27 C keep around 10-15 C, in the summer on average. Average annual level of rainfall is 510 millimeters. Ashdod represents the city extended on 12 kilometers along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. In the northern part of the city there is the main cargo port of Israel. Through the Ashdod port there pass 2/3 sea cargo transportation of the country. And the industrial zone, close to him. Residential quarters of the city are under construction along the coast in the southern direction. In 2009 in the city large traffic intersections, both on northern and on the southern entrance and departure appeared. Among sights of the city it is also possible to note the special artificial bay intended for calling of yachts which can contain up to 500 vessels. Economies. Ashdod is one of the most important industrial centers of the country. All industrial enterprises of the city are located in his northern part, in a port zone, in the northern industrial zone, and near the Lachish River. The port of Ashdod, the biggest in Israel, passes 60% of all floating cargoes through him. It significantly was modernized in recent years, and now can accept the Panamax freighters. In a port zone offices of some ship companies, power plant, Ashdod and the coal terminal are also located. The northern industrial zone is located on the Highway 41 and includes various plants, including the oil refinery plant, one of 2 in the country. The zone of the heavy industry located to the south from the Lachish River was the main industrial center of Ashdod earlier. Recently around the leisure centers began to appear. Nevertheless, here still there is an industry, for example the pharmaceutical company, Teva, producer of Astrum building materials, and the company on production of soy solbar oil. In Ashdod the Elta company, a part of aviation industry of Israel concern is also located. The radar equipment, means of radio-electronic fight and also means of radio-electronic investigation of Elent are developed here. The Israeli company of water supply Mekaret announced the beginning of construction in Ashdod the enterprises for water desalting. Project cost -1.5 billion shekels. The plant has to be put into operation in 2013. It will produce 100 million cubic meters of desalinated water a year, -15% of the need for drinking water in Israel. Historically, each district of Ashdod has own commercial center. In 1990, parallel to cultural development of big shopping centers in Israel, the primary commercial activity in Ashdod moved to malls. The Jewish natives of the Arab countries repatriated to Israel in the late 50s and the 1968 years became the first residents of the modern city. In the 70th years of the 20th century, Ashdod became the main place of resettlement of the Georgian Jews. In the city there live several tens of thousands of Orthodox Jews. From 1990 to 2000 the population of the city grew from 60,000 to card people. According to the Central Statistical Bureau of Israel, the population for the beginning of 2020 made 225,939 people. For 2019, Ashdod was the 6th in population city of Israel. In 2018, 89.7% of the population were made by Jews. Natural increase of the population is 0.8%. 29. 1% of the population, the repatriates who arrived after 1990. The city was one of the centers where repatriates from the CIS settled. In 2014, they made 26% of the population. 57.4% of graduates of schools received the school leaving certificate. 25.0% of the population have the certificate on the higher education. The average salary for 2017 was 85.64 shekels. In Ashdod, the Israeli Andalusian Orchestra settles down. The orchestra executes a combination of the Western and Arab music. The orchestra was conferred an Award of Israel in 2006. The Conservatory of Akadma Institute of Professional Education of Music is based in Ashdod and functions under the direction of the Ministry of Education. The institute was created in 1966 and forms base for 600 young musicians in various areas. The Center of Performing Art of Mohabt has various art schools, studios and events. The City Company on Culture, at which the Department of Projects works at Russian, is responsible for cultural life of Ashdod. The Sea Sounds Festival, since 2004, during the summer period, on and end of Saturday, on Gandhi Embankment, a great number of local actors and children's collectives act. Since 2013, the festival takes place in a city amphitheater and the leading stars of a Russian-speaking platform take part in them. The International Festival of Jazz, Super Jazz Ashdod, an annual festival, is held with participation of one of the most famous Israeli Russian-speaking musicians of Leonid Tashki. The two-day autumn festival, subsidized with municipality, gives to inhabitants an opportunity to get acquainted with the international stars of jazz. The festival was cancelled in 2019. The International Festival of Circus Arts, since 2015, takes place, the only international festival of circus in Israel in which dozens of actors of circus from the different countries of the world participate in Ashdod. The festival was cancelled in 2019. The International Competition of Ballroom Dances, the status of this competition is very high. The official European Championship among professionals according to the European program, and the World Cup among professionals in the Latin American program. Hundreds of couples from dozens of the countries of the world annually participate in a competition. The competition was cancelled in 2019. Day of Georgia in Ashdod is celebrated this day every one on October 8, in day when 40 years ago Jews from Georgia went to Israel. The Georgian Jews celebrate the day of the country with big solemnity. Within the celebration there takes place the exhibition and sale of the Georgian books, demonstration of the Georgian dishes, an art exhibition, and also a concert with display of the Georgian national dances and songs. The Wine Festival, since 2009, takes place, a two-day festival of wine in Ashdod. The Window to the Mediterranean Sea Festival, an annual two-day festival of the Israeli popular music, takes place in August in a Nabareni amphitheater. The football tournament For Our Victory. Since 2009 in May in Ashdod takes place the tournament devoted to the Victory Day. Many participate in games, media persons, famous on the Russian street. The festival was cancelled in 2019. The competition, Person of Year, an annual celebration of the cause des stir Russian-speaking inhabitants of Ashdod. The competition was cancelled in 2019. Hospital in Ashdod. In April 2011, the competition on construction and operation of the Ashdod Hospital was closed. The medical center Ashdod, which won a competition, undertook to construct hospital in 6 years. The Ashdod Hospital in Ashdod began to work in June 2017. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.